Episode 2, Moving Furniture.
Or Two Truths and a Lay.
Or gonna learn what a long dick is today.
Or Beauty and the Beast.
Oh.
That was beautiful.
Right after John's. I was trying really hard not to laugh. Thank you.
Gonna learn what a beast is today.
Welcome back to Between Pages and Friends, a book club podcast hosted by Con and Lauren, two besties who are reading this book for the very first time, and Jon and Kyle, our five-star husbands and the evil masterminds behind this season of the show. I'm Con.
I'm Lauren.
I'm Jon.
And I'm Kyle. Welcome to episode 3 of the Fae and Alchemy series by Callie Hart. Today we're talking about Quicksilver chapters 16 to 22. This is a book club podcast, meaning there will be no spoilers here for future chapters or books, so this is a safe place to read along with us. And while you're here, do us a solid and share this podcast with your book besties, or that one person you've been trying to lovingly force this book upon. We'd love for you to enjoy this epic series with your favorite people too.
Before we get too deep into today's mayhem, let's take a moment for some responsible podcasting. This is the part where we pretend we're mature adults and give you a heads up about what's coming. This book does not shy away from adult themes, and neither shall we. This is your last chance to skedoodle before we start talking about moving furniture.
And if you're here for this unfiltered discussion and want to fangirl with us even more, our Patreon is the place to be. For $5 a month, you can join our Book Bestie tier, it's in bold, with access to our cozy Discord and monthly book chats, live events, and a whole community of book besties to hang out with. For $10 a month, you'll join our Found Family tier and get all of the above, plus early access and ad-free episode merch discounts, voting power, and front row seats to the behind-the-scenes fun.
Next, come meet us in person at Enchanticon. We are so hyped to be attending this event as influencers and answering all of your spoiler-free questions about starting Throne of Glass at this year's convention happening August 15th to 17th in St. Louis, Missouri. Enchanticon is an all-new expanded fantasy convention from Mischief Management. We would absolutely love to see you there, so grab your tickets at enchanticon.com and use our code FRIENDS15 to get 15% off.
And last but not least, if you love what we do, show us some love with a review on Apple Podcasts or Audible. It helps more readers find our little corner of the internet and keeps this crazy train chugging right along. Here's a recent 5-star review on Apple Podcasts from our new bestie, Kelsey Jewell, titled Comfort Podcast. I always recommend this podcast to my book friends. It honestly feels like a conversation with my besties and is definitely my comfort podcast, Lil Blue Heart. Thank you, Kelsey.
Aww.
Thanks, Kelsey.
So nice.
And welcome back to Con's Declassified Fantasy Pronunciation Guide, the part of the show where we highlight all the new names and places mentioned in this chapter section. First up in places, we have Omnimaran, the name of the tallest mountain peak near Kalish. This means sleeping giant in Old Fae. Later, we hear the whole mountain range referred to as the Omnimaran Mountains as well. Inir is the war camp on the other side of the mountains. This is spelled Irrin. So I'm still a little confused by this, but they say it multiple times and it is pronounced Inir. And then we have Amantrath, the seat of the enemy, aka Hell's Teeth. Voriel, the port city of the Western Dow. Also mentioned here is Taran Ross Island and the Shallow Mountains. In characters, we have Oris, who first saw the crew when they landed in Kalish. Archer, the fire sprite in the palace at Kalish. Telena, a beautiful fae healer in the palace. Holgoth, who greeted Renfis at Inir. Danya, the blonde warrior in the war room tent. Lorith, the male with the black war braids. And then we have some confirmation here that Malcolm is a person, in fact, not a group of people, and he is king of the vampires. Lauren, are you breathing?
No! So excited.
And finally, in world building, we have Widow's Bane, which is one of the labeled herbs in the Forge, and the Autumn Court was mentioned in passing here as a people group who used to reside in the Shallow Mountains with the Galarian Fae. And that's all I have for you. Here's Jon with this. It's going to be a recap.
Get ready for the juice.
Oh, no.
Excuse me? Usually you describe that in emojis.
We'll get there. All right, picking up right where we left off here. Saris follows them outside the tavern to Fisher standing in front of a shadow gate to Kalish. She tries to tell him that there is no way she's going through that, but their oath has other plans, as it basically moves her body for her, and she walks right into the black void after Ren. She throws up a bunch, Ren helps her to stand and helps her to a room as she blacks out, and comes to with Onyx growling at Carrion at the foot of a very soft bed. With Carrion finally awake, she goes after him about what he was thinking thinking, claiming to be Hayden. Carrion proceeds to tell her that Hayden is doing just fine. When she was taken to the palace, he had Hayden moved to the 7th ward. He's got a job in a little apartment. Elroy is okay too, so he reassures her that Madra isn't planning anything as they're getting preparations ready for even light. Then she tells Carrion all that she knows up to this point. Fisher shows up and needs Saris to come with him, and she's a bit apprehensive, decides to make a deal with him and get it verbatim this time so as to not be tricked, and he complies. As they head to the forge, she gets to see more of the house, portraits, nice furniture. Fisher explains that his great-great-grandfather built the home, and this was his home before Belicon commanded his mother to marry him. And then we meet Archer, the family fire sprite butler. What a gent. They finally get to the forge. She notices the mountain range outside and also that they are in a different location. They go through a door that apparently transports them directly there, which is pretty freaking sweet, honestly. Magic. Fisher brings out a trunk full of silver rings, 1,800 to be exact, with 8 more trunks also. They are all family rings of the warriors who fight for Fisher, and Saris's new job is to make relics of each and every one. She tries to read a bunch of old alchemist books Fisher has lying around, but doesn't really get anything useful, so instead decides to just start experimenting on some other metals that she finds in the forge. She finds the smallest bit of Quicksilver in the forge, tries a few failed attempts at making something. She heads back to the house frustrated. She runs into Rin, and he tells her that he's set up Fisher and her to have a dinner so that Fisher can learn more about her because it will help with the whole he needs to see you as a person thing. They have dinner together, although they're on two ends of like a very long table, flowers in the middle, can't see each other, so Fisher has to cast his voice as they speak so she can hear him. She gets riled up talking about her failures in the forge, demands some wine. She ends up picking up her glass and food and goes to sit next to him at the other end of the table. They talk about the need for silver and how Belicon has an embargo on silver in the realm, but won't give any to the war effort. Some of the sprites come in, including Archer, and they all freak out about Saris, assuming that she moved. Saris tells Fisher that he should send Carrion back home at least, and then gives him a hard time again about how he snatched Carrion instead of Hayden. Fisher elegantly explains that he smelled her on Carrion, but couldn't differentiate in that moment the SEX, and as they're talking, something blasts through the dining room windows. 4 somethings, to be exact. The biggest one going after Fisher and 2 others after Saris. She fights them off for a bit, but they end up getting the upper hand, but Fisher Shadows takes one of their heads off, and then he slices the head off the other. But Saris has been clawed and it needs to be healed. She kind of blacks out, and we find out that these were what are called feeders, foot soldiers from Amantrath. Saris has a nightmare. She's blacked out from her wound. She jolts awake, finding herself in Fisher's bed. Yes, that's right. He mentions that their quote-unquote intrusion won't happen again, that he ignored Ren's suggestion for posting guards at the house. Then he tells her that he's going to Inir for a week and that she is to stay in bed. And when he leaves laughing, Saris realizes that she's bound by the oath to do just that. We meet Telena, the healer who comes to check on Saris, who apparently is drop-dead gorge. And, oh no, it's taking me back. Irene. Anyway, on her final day of staying in bed, Carrion brings her breakfast, tries to get it in, but Saris is having none of that. We learn that Carrion has been keeping himself busy, mainly training with the guards. Fisher also gave him some boots in exchange for a bath? Weird. And he tells Saris about his foursome with the water sprites. Back in the forge, Saris tries some more combinations and failures as she grows more and more frustrated. Rin comes to visit and invites her to dinner with Fisher again. She makes Rin come too. She also asks him about magic, specifically Fisher's sword, Nimarel. Rin tells her that it used to shine silver, but has since tarnished. However, the magic has stayed even when other god swords have gone silent. They go to dinner. She also drags Carrion along. Rin has a strong and confounded reaction to Saris taking up the seat to the right of Fisher. They have some great banter during dinner. Fisher and Saris have a very interesting whispered conversation of their own. Mostly about how she acts like she doesn't want him, but her body says otherwise. The next morning, they head to the war camp. They get all the sights, thousands of tents, many other structures of the camp itself, the frozen Darn, the emptiness and black charred wasteland on the other side, and finally, Amantrath, the main fortress of Amantrath, looming on the hill in the distance. Fisher gets a report from a tree man and then skulks off into the camp. Carrion and Saris follow Ren. The three have some sparring practice, Carrion trying his best while Ren casually tells them some history about the Darn, like literally while sparring with Carrion. Then it's Ceres's turn. She does get her butt kicked a little, but does fairly well still against Ren. Fisher shows up and takes her to his tent. Yes. They have some soup and end up making out a little, surprisingly. Fisher takes off out of the tent, and Sarah shortly after, thoughts racing. She runs into Ren, who takes her to the war tent. Carrion's already there, enjoying some quiche as they chat about what is happening in the tent. Carrion notices Ceres's neck is bleeding, just kind of randomly. We meet Danya and Loreth. Danya's upset about Fisher being gone and tries to stab him, but Sarah splinters the sword, shooting all of the shards into the ceiling. Then shouts ring out in the camp and all hell breaks loose. Loreth tells Ceres and Carrion to stay put, that Sanisroth attacks and they must break the ice. But they don't stay in the tent long, compelled to help. Ceres and Carrion head to the bank. They see a black mass on the other side, roaring. The tree man, close by, explains that it's the better part of the Sanisrothian horde. Vampires, a.k.a. the Feeders. Lauren!
I'm freaking out. Oh my God.
There are vampires in this book.
I know. I'm so excited.
We'll talk about it. We'll talk about it. The Fae finally break the ice and Fisher's shadows sweep over and push the Feeders under. Then a voice sounds from the other side. Malcolm, they learn, king of the vampires.
Tell me more.
He taunts Fisher, tries to create some dissension among the Fae troops, but ultimately retreats. The battle over, Fisher immediately finds Ceres, and they vanish quickly back to college and to Fisher's bedroom. We learn that Malcolm is a high Fae vampire, the very first, actually. We get some more info and history here about the curse and how some Fae wanted to remain so because of the power and immortality. She then calls him out about actually liking her and not hating her, that there's something between them. And then he moves, and it's on and popping. And, of course, I have the gif in our notes of Schmidt and his, what is this?
Kimono.
And his
kimono.
very short kimono saying, it's on and popping up in here, you feel? Anyway. Horny hunger meets carnal curiosity in a flash of clothes ripped off and disappearing by dark shadows. And we have our first Quicksilver emoji erotica.
Emoji erotica. Emoji erotica.
There's never
felt like
something
it
I
needed a
thought
chant.
would be chanted ever in the history of the world.
Well, it's happening.
I still like yours, Lauren, where you were like nobody else was cheering, and you were like, woo, emoji, erotica.
Like you try to call in response, but had to do it yourself.
That was great. Okay. Kissy face. Flame. Shirt. Red X. Chest pawn. The swirly, squiggly eye face. Helmet. 2 fingers. Question mark. Check mark. Parenthesis. Black circle. Dusty cloud thing. I don't even know. It's like the little pff. What would I call that?
A gust
I use
of
that for
wind.
fart.
A gust?
Yeah, I use that for either fart or my car is driving fast.
Sure. I'll
I
just
think
say
it's called the wind
cloud.
emoji.
I think it is
Wind?
like a little
The wind?
gust.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Sure.
Black circle, wind, close parentheses. Pants, red X. Eggplant, ruler. Rose, side eye. Exasperated face, tooth. Tongue. Plunger, bell, 2 fingers. Parentheses, black circle, wave, in parentheses. Surprise face, boxing glove, wave. Capital F, witch, boxing glove, wolf, map, bird, puzzle piece, wave, stars, parentheses, battery, ram, in parentheses, shouting silhouette.
You're laughing. I love that so much, John. It's funny.
Shouting silhouette, surprise face. And that's our first Quicksilver emoji ranking.
Great stuff.
Hey, I think that counts as a cry counter for John. He's over there going.
I don't know why that got me so much going over it. Oh, God. I also made notes this time, like in the book, in case I forgot some of the some
actions.
of the emojis.
He did, but he
Just
didn't
in
tell
case.
me that was happening. So I was scrolling through to make sure that I finished the pronunciation guide. There was the highlight just said "sucked her clit," and then the note was "plunger." It was just the word "plunger," and I sent a screenshot to John. And I was like, "Excuse me."
Oh,
It's
God.
amazing.
That was a good one. All right. Holy cow.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, it was. And what a first experience, am I right? For all of us. Yeah, Saris included. He has her stay there while he returns to the war camp, as there's much to be done after the battle. Testing a boundary through the oath, Sarah steps into the hallway and finds Archer mid-belly rub for Onyx, following an awkward exchange as he encourages her to eat to replenish her energy levels. Onyx rushes inside as Sarah closes the door, still reeling about what just happened.
Same girl.
And thus ends the recap.
Wow,
Amazing, as
that
always.
was a good one.
Yeah.
Yes, incredible. So let's dive backwards into chapter 16.
I was diving backwards.
I don't know. You were at
what
the
he
end
said.
of the recap. We're going back to chapter 16
I see.
for the in-depth perspective.
Pre-dive.
I thought we were
Yes.
just doing like cool flips off the diving board, but sure.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, I have the first note here. This is when it was describing the shadow gate and how it, quote, pulled at the light, drawing the orange glow from the tavern's windows toward it, twisting it into fine threads that sucked it into the spinning singularity in its center. And my imagination, I pictured like strands of light being like pulled toward it. I just thought this was a really cool description, but also it made me very curious about Fisher's magic here with this description and just how he like came about having it. So just noting
Same.
that. I just thought it was interesting.
I would also love to know that. My first and only note for this chapter is that Kingfisher's mouth ticked imperceptibly. So cheers, everybody.
Oh.
Got an early one.
So early.
And Minnie's here already.
Hi,
She's
Minnie.
clocking in.
She's doing her quality control. She works for OSHA. Get Minnie a little mini hat.
She's our
needs a- like
she's
a
our
little
undercover infiltrator.
A little visibility vest.
Okay, so my first note was when Saris doesn't want to go through the gate and she was talking about like taking off or whatever. And Kingfisher says, "Are you thinking about running? Gods, I hope so. I'll give you a head start if you like. It's been an age since I've hunted anything." Okay, Kingfisher, calm down. What a setup for how this chapter section ends.
Is it hot in here?
Well, my first note of this chapter section was after she goes through the shadow gate and gets all barfy about it, she collapses into Renfis helping her up, and Saris thinks, oh, there's nothing more undignified than collapsing into the arms of a male you barely know. And my only note was like, I have a feeling for this male specifically, Lauren would have a very different opinion about this situation.
My note here was jealous.
I feel like this would not have been the first time if this was you. You would constantly just be like, oh, wait, oh, no. Thanks for catching me,
Constantly
Renfis.
tripping.
Falling.
Yeah.
Falling
I'm
in
so
love.
clumsy.
Falling in love. It's just the accent. I feel like if I was reading him only on the page, I would probably just be like, oh yeah, Renfis, whatever. But that accent,
It's pretty nice.
it is so nice. You're muted.
You're muted. Wow.
Dang it.
Welcome.
My next note, it's about Carrion talking to, he's just saying, you're right, ignore me. So what did I say this time?
Called him a
Carry
carry-on. Carry-on luggage.
It's about carry on.
Sorry, it's about Carrion. He was talking to Saris, sort of just like telling her everything that he thinks is wrong with this situation, and she's sort of ignoring him. So he says, you're right, ignore me. So you have the ability to awaken this Quicksilver, the pool that your new boyfriend dragged me into, and no one else has been able to do that for 1,000 years, and now you've made some kind of unbreakable promise to a malevolent, legendary Fae warrior who might be completely insane. You don't know what he wants from you, and she sort of cuts him off, but I was like, hey, thanks for the recap, bro. It's been like 16 chapters. I needed like a quick refresher on what everything that's happened.
Thesis
like
statement.
Yeah.
He's trying to
revised.
catch up. He's been
Yeah.
knocked out. So
Yeah, still useful for a reader, though. I remember
Yeah.
reading it like in the audiobook happening, I was like, oh yeah, that is pretty much everything that's happening.
right,
Good,
yeah.
good.
This whole chapter section really, but like it starts kind of here where Kingfisher is kind of picking up on Carrion and Saris's like previous relationship or like interaction that they had, and he is so jealous, like so
jealous.
clearly jealous, and it is freaking amazing. This is the tension I am here for. This is what I've needed in every book I've ever read, and I just love like a he fell first. Like he hasn't openly said all of that, but he very clearly has feelings.
He
one
wants
way.
it bad.
Oh, so bad. So, big fan.
Near the end of this chapter, Saris makes a deal with Kingfisher, a binding deal, whatever. She gets it verbatim. She's like, she says exactly what she wants him to say, which is, I swear I will release you and allow you and Carrion to return to Zilvarin the moment you have made enough relics for my people. And when I read this, I was like, oh, she barely understands her situation and makes yet another Fae deal after getting completely screwed over by the first one with very little info about what's going on. Surely nothing will go wrong.
Definitely not. And definitely not immediately in the next chapter.
The narrator voice,
for real.
something went wrong.
Exactly. Well, that does take us to chapter 17, titled Callish, which also every time I hear the word Callish, I laugh. Like it's like call-ish. That's what I think every time. Anyways, we get introduced to Archer, the little fire sprite, and he's just the freaking cutest little guy, and he's so helpful. And in the audiobook, his little voice is just so cute, and I love him, and I need a little fire sprite Archer to help me around my house. That's it. That's my note. If somebody could get me one of those, I'd appreciate it. Put it on my wish list.
My next note, well, I have several notes in this section about Kingfisher's tattoos. This particular quote says, Kingfisher's skin was pale apart from a single stark black rune visible between the base of his skull and his shirt collar. It was complex, all interlocking fine lines, loops, and curls. Most of the runes I'd seen on the Fae had been ugly looking things, but this, ... Kingfisher looked up at Archer. The rune disappeared. But then Lauren put a note in here that said she thought the rune disappeared because it was just behind his hair. Like, what do you mean, like when he looked up?
Yeah, because he like bent over to look at Archer, and so his long hair would have parted, and then when he just like stood up, like when he looked up at Archer, his hair would have went back. So I thought that just like covered it up. You thought
that
it,
very
like,
well could be true. I thought it literally disappeared because it's always talking about how his tattoos are like moving around. So I thought this was like it literally disappeared, but also just the fact that it doesn't look like most of the runes that she's seen is really interesting.
Like,
to
how
me.
many has she seen? She's been
I don't
for 10
know.
minutes.
That's very true.
That's what I'm saying.
Does anybody else get like a little bit of a Maui vibe when it talks about his tattoos moving around? Okay.
1000%.
I did
That's
not,
always
but
what
now
I picture. It's like a little kingfisher on his own peck being like,
Saris 1, you 0.
Why does he have 3 legs?
Oh my god.
oh my god.
Oh my god.
All right.
All right, my next note. I'd call this out if you've been with us since Throne of Glass. It reads, I was hit with a wave of his scent, all cold dawn morning and the promise of snow. And I wrote, Kendall. Candle
Promise
watch.
of Snow would be a great candle name.
That would be. That would be nice. It'd be like,
That's a great smell.
yeah, kind of like maybe a little bit piney and a little bit snowy.
A little bit
and
Kingfisher.
A little bit Kingfisher. You know.
A little bit Alexis.
Little bit of Monica. Ladies and gentlemen, candle number 5.
Candle number 5. There it is. Candle number 5.
That's amazing.
Reading it now, I gotta say, cold dawn morning sort of bothers me. Like, cold dawn morning, sunrise, early day. There's a lot of, you can just say dawn or morning. It doesn't have to, whatever.
That's actually on the description for candle number 5. Cold dawn, morning, sunrise, early day.
Like wraps
and
around
the
with all
promise of
these.
snow.
What's up with the Yankee Candle recently? Getting kind of weird.
Getting a little wordy on the labels.
And my next note, this is when Saris is asking Fisher about why he didn't just do the Shadow Gate at the Winter Palace. And he mentions that the tavern was 50 leagues from the Winter Palace, which coincidentally is the exact distance required to perform heavy-hitting magic without alerting someone you want to keep in the dark, referencing Belicon. And I just wrote a little convenient little fact here. Certainly, we won't need this for later, probably, maybe.
Definitely.
I highlighted it for the same reason. Like,
For sure.
Gotta remember that. Yep.
Yeah, definitely keep it in the back pocket.
I just also, my next note is all Thanks for putting it back there first, Jon. Save that for later. My next note is also one of those. Just a little side note, just something to remember for later. But as they're walking down the hall, Kingfisher flips off the gods again as he passes them, not even breaking his stride. I just don't feel like that's going to do him well in the future, but guess we'll find out.
But Ceres will.
Yeah, she will. Okay, Connor.
Okay. Speaking of doing him well in the future, at the end of this chapter, Sarah says, but I don't even know how to turn these into relics yet. That alone could take weeks. It could take months. And then Kingfisher says, then you'd better get back to work. And I wrote, force proximity.
It's my favorite kind of proximity.
That seems problematic for you. Like, I don't know.
I couldn't even say the whole word without laughing, realizing what I was saying. Wow.
Wow.
That was good.
Ooh, okay, well, that takes us into chapter 18, which is titled Crucible. My first note is just that Onyx is unbearably cute. He's unbearably cute. I had so many highlights about Onyx in this section. This one specifically says, quote, I spent a good 15 minutes laughing at him as he coiled back onto his hind legs, wriggled his fluffy butt, and then sprang into the air, bringing his front feet crashing down on the snow as he bounced. It's so cute. So cute. He's like a little kitty cat. Oh, and then Ceres's dancing metal power is just becoming cooler and cooler by the chapter. So this is the part where she's in the forge, and it's kind of talking about the plated metals, silver, and variants of iron that she'd never encountered before. But it says they each had their own frequencies. It didn't take long to isolate the frequency for Evelian silver. I simply held a bunch of the rings and closed my eyes, learning what the energy felt like when it traveled up my arms, and committed it to memory. This was just so cool. It was like happening so fast. Like now that she's aware of this power, it's like she's finding cool new ways to utilize it. And I'm very excited for her.
Yeah, I was loving that she was like actually exploring her power and taking like tiny steps with it. Because we've seen her do some like really big moves already, which is cool. But it was always like in an emotional, panicky type moment. And so I love that she's like actually getting a chance to slowly understand what is happening and not like trying to fight the feeling like she actually has like permission to study and stuff. So I'm totally here for it.
It is really cool. I do think it's hilarious though that she's just throwing random shit into the silver and hoping something happens.
I said that's science for you. That's alchemy. I mean, I've always thought like, what a job to have to discover a new material, because most of what they do is just like, let's see what happens if we do several things to it, and we'll just take notes. Somebody might die. Who knows?
I love the way that it's written, because it's just like, it sounds so nonchalant and like nothing is labeled. They've mentioned like one thing that's actually labeled. She's like, well, next I just threw half a rubber chicken and some unlabeled red powder shit in there and it caught on fire. Who knew? That's just so funny to read. Changing gears a little bit. For some God's forsaken reason, I am just as obsessed with Kingfisher's pointy teeth as Ceres is. My actual note from this whole paragraph just said hot. But this part made me think of New Girl, the quote where it says, Fisher opened his mouth a fraction wider, his top lip rising a little so that more of his teeth were on show. And I put the gift from New Girl where Schmidt's trying to teach Jess how to smile, and she like raises her top lip and he's like, you look like a hungry badger. I just couldn't get that out of my head.
Yeah, I read this note from you, and for some godforsaken reason, oh, Connor, my sweet, sweet friend, you know the reason, and you can say it with me. Ready? Vampires. They're hot. You love it.
She's just saying that because she's trying to get me to read Twilight.
Well, yeah, but regardless,
that's
they're
fair.
Best.
No, it is fair.
Anytime I want to try to
teeth
flirt
are
with
sexy.
Lauren, I
I
just
don't
have to
know what
come
it
in the
is.
room and say, hello, young lady.
Blah, blah, blah.
Throw a cape around
Got his cape, yeah.
One.
two.
Oh my god.
That's it. That does it for me.
Wow. That's
She's like, oh my
that's the one.
goodness.
She's about her.
Stop.
Is that where it started, Lauren? The count on Sesame Street?
No, it is not. Let's be very clear on this, everyone on
What
the
a standard.
internet.
I was going to say.
No.
She's always like vampires, I guess. I don't know.
Oh my god.
Anyway, my next note, I was dying at jealous Kingfisher sending Ceres on Carrion from 3 miles away when they were trying to explain like how he got to Carrion and confused him for Aiden. And I think I even said in that first episode that like maybe he could scent the fact that like they had sex or something, but I was like, but that was 3 months ago. That's probably not it.
Which also just shows because like the first thing he made Carrion do is take a bath. And so Carrion hasn't had a bath in all that time. Like I forget that because they live in a world without water. So like her first bath was when she got here too. So like that was probably the reason he still smelled like gross, which is super gross.
That did not even occur to me.
So gross. Okay, well, they arrive and they didn't tell any of the people in Kingfisher's house that they were coming back. And so all the little sprites and all the people who take care of the house were like freaking out. And so one of the ladies went, Lord, one of them, a female, squawked, my Lord. There's just anything, 2 dragons. Because it said squawked. Just made me laugh. Lord. So good. Okay, so I have, I think, 4 references as to why this chapter section is titled Beauty and the Beast from my part at the beginning. So here is the first. And it's when Kingfisher was like, or excuse me, it's when they have dinner together for the first night and Renfish is trying to like, I don't know, wingman and help him out and all the things. And then Saris says, I'll be eating dinner in the forge tomorrow. And Fisher says, you'll be eating here. She goes, I don't get a say in the matter. In my room then. You'll be eating here, Fisher repeated. And I just wrote, it's giving Beauty and the Beast with, you will join me for dinner. That is not a request. And he slams the door and runs away. Exactly.
That's exactly what's happening.
You will join me for dinner. Oh, I love it. And then at dinner, one of the things they're talking about this whole smell thing with Carrion. And one of the things Kingfisher says, Sarah says, there's no way you could smell me on him. And Kingfisher rumbles, there's every way. I'd know the smell of you anywhere, on anyone. I'd know it blind and in the dark, across the effing sea. I'd be able to scent you. And then they get interrupted. But it's like, oh, I don't know why that's so hot and attractive when they do. I'm here for it.
You must have loved the movie Up.
I can smell you. I can smell you.
And he does. He crosses the whole world just to put the house where
he crosses the effing canyon. Do you think it's because that when they met, she also freaking reeked? And he's like, yeah, that smells in my head forever.
Yeah, it's like when you smell something bad, you just can't get it out of your nose.
Yeah. Can't unsmell that.
Yep.
Even after all the baths she took, he's like, no, it's still there.
My next note is when the feeders arrive, and the exact quote says, boom, the windows along the eastern wall of the dining room blew in. And I wrote, the bank exploded. At this point, I had stopped like after this chapter or something, and John was just asking me like what I was reading. And I was like, oh yeah, and they were having like a nice dinner, and then the bank exploded. And he was like, the bank? He just like didn't get the reference. So that's a TikTok sound if you don't know what I'm talking about.
Thank you for linking the TikTok in our notes.
You're welcome. I did.
Oh.
Yeah, just in case. Okay, I have another tattoo note. It says the largest of the 4 feeders, a male with a thick black runic tattoo across his forehead, which I just thought was interesting because now that we know that the feeders are from Malcolm, are the rune tattoos also from him? If these are somehow different, like I don't know if this matches the type of rune that Kingfisher has, but I'm just wondering if Kingfisher's rune tattoo is from like a bargain with Malcolm or something. That was just kind of where my brain went. I'm trying to figure out this tattoo thing because I feel like there's a lot going on. I don't understand any of it. But there's that.
I agree that there's something going on with Malcolm and Kingfisher, obviously. Whether it's the rune or whatever. I have theories on that later. But this could have been, like this feeder specifically could have been a fae that was just turned into one of these like mindless whatever and had his own weird fae runes or something.
True.
I don't know.
Maybe he's related to Theophany.
Yeah, got the one.
You guys think there's something between Malcolm and Kingfisher? Like a little history there?
Maybe he called him darling.
Darling. There's something going on.
What are we?
Malcolm, stop playing with
2
me.
weeks. It's been 2 weeks.
Yeah. You gotta have a DTR.
It's been 110 years.
I don't know what to tell my friends.
I can't tell them anything. Okay. I just had to put some of this in here because these descriptions of the feeders are like straight nightmare fuel. I was not expecting it to go this hard. Like it just kept going and it just kept getting worse. But the one that like launched up onto the table, it says landing on all fours. She moved jerkily, her head tilting from side to side as she craned her neck toward me, sniffing the air like an animal. And there was one like licking the carpet.
Yeah, with this like nubby tongue.
Yeah. And then there's maggots and I don't know. I can't do that. The female reared back, wet strands of her saliva dripping down onto my chest. She opened her mouth, her jaw cracking open far wider than it should have been able to. Cheers.
No. Yeah, she opened her mouth.
But then she opened her jaw, revealing a blackened, mangled, pulsing stump where her tongue should have been. And I wrote, right to jail. Straight to jail, Callie.
Straight to
this
jail.
Criminal. You go right to jail. Right away. I don't know. I just, whew, that was a lot.
Yeah, it was aggressive.
It was aggressive.
And for it to like come out of nowhere, it was like, oh, romantic and swoon, and he's gonna smell her across the ocean or whatever, and then it was like, ba-bam!
Couldn't
Literally,
smell that
boom.
one coming.
Yeah, couldn't smell her everywhere. Couldn't smell these guys coming in the window.
I feel like also like those descriptions had to have been like the day after you're thinking about it, because in the moment my brain would be too busy going to be like, oh, that's where your tongue should be. That's a weird black pulsing stump. It'd be after like, oh yeah, that was freaky.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, for me, the only quote I put in here, other than obviously what you highlighted and everything too, was whenever she was looking at one specifically, and it said, his eyes were blank. Both of their eyes were. There were no intelligence there, no real thought, only the desire to rip and tear and kill. And I'm just finding it super interesting, this like twist on these like vampire-y creatures where they're almost like zombie-like. Some of them with like the horde of them, and we see that at the water with the icebreakers or whatever the whole moment. And then the hopefully really cute, hot, sexy kind like Malcolm potentially or others exist. Because I'm here for vampires, but not these kinds. I just want to make sure we're clear. Because these ones are creepy.
Okay.
Well, beggars can't be choosers. So.
Well, but my only note that I actually typed in my Kindle on this was that I liked my idea of a feeder, that it was just Jon eating snacks during the podcast, much better than these guys.
Yeah, my prediction for the feeders was not this detailed, and it never would have been.
Nope.
I don't think my brain would have come up with this. All right, my last note for 18 is that Kingfisher clenched his jaw, his throat muscles working. So, clinkies.
That one I approve. Not that other one. Okay, chapter 19, bones and all. Sarah's like has passed out because of getting attacked by the feeders, and Kingfisher like rushes her to a healer, and she is laying in his bed, and she wakes up and it says paintings hung on the wall in gilded frames, though the artwork within those frames was slashed to ribbons. And then even later in the chapter, she was like to Kingfisher, why are all the paintings like that? And he says, because I destroyed them. I just want to make sure I put the picture from Beauty and the Beast where Beast rips all his own paintings of himself in his room. So Kingfisher is just the Beast. Just saying. It's this whole section, it just is.
It is.
Beauty and the Beast.
I love it. This is a callback to the Empyrean series, but when she's looking around the room, it says an armoire was positioned in the corner, its doors flung open, displaying an array of dark garments within. And I wrote, well, at least she doesn't have to ask what's in the armoire.
That's true.
Good for them.
But then the bed, it says it's a 4-poster bed with birds, wolves, and dragons carved into the posts. And I wrote, wolves and dragons, Lauren!
I also had this highlighted, and my note was just like a bunch of exclamation marks. And when I came to, I was like, oh, good, that's my next note. And I look over at the notes, and I see wolves and dragons, Lauren! And I was like, oh, so in sync.
With a bunch of exclamation points.
Exactly. I hope that means there's dragons in this world. That'd be cool.
I hope so, too. I think there are.
Oh, he said that like a wolf.
It's happening.
That was amazing.
Thank you. And then Sarah's clenched her teeth, so cheers again.
Wow.
She's going to need a mouth guard at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Invisalign.
Well, my note here is Kingfisher going on, or possibly going off, on what he has against humans. He says that we are nothing alike. You nearly died from a scratch that would have been a mild irritation to me. You're soft, you're fragile, you're vulnerable, you're a newborn fawn stumbling around in the dark, surrounded by predators with very sharp teeth. I am the thing that exists on the other side of the dark. I'm the thing that puts the fear of the gods into the monsters who would eat you bones and all. And I put the little picture of, oh, watch out, we got a badass over here.
I mean, I'm here for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Meanwhile, my note here is I had underlined the part when he says, I'm the thing that exists on the other side of the dark. And I was like, oh, hell yeah. Like, I thought it was,
Like, this is badass.
this is badass, man.
I think it is cool. I think it would have been like maybe 10 times cooler if it wasn't him saying it about himself. Like if someone else was like, Kingfisher's the dude that will do this to you. But he's like, you know, you build yourself up a little bit. I'm like, all right, Kingfisher, calm down. Like, let someone else hype you up. But
he is the knight. Who else
Put
is
his chapstick on. No, you sleep. I don't sleep.
You sleep, I'm awake.
staying vigilant?
Oh my God. Okay, well, in her reaction to that, Sarah says, "Oh, F you, princeling." And I was like, okay, okay. At some point in this chapter section, he calls her a witch. And so if we hear the words witchling, I am going to die. I will die. I'm just putting that out there.
I love it.
Princeling.
I forgot I wrote this next note. Hold on. Okay. So Kingfisher keeps getting really close and then pulling away in this like really dramatic way. And in Sarah's POV, it says, why was he like this? What exactly was his problem? And I wrote, probably his haunted eyeball. Were you even listening to Renfist, Miss Girl?
Are you like saying it makes him nearsighted? That he has to get close to her?
His vision keeps changing.
Renfist literally just went on this like whole monologue to her about how unstable he is because of the Quicksilver and this whole thing. And she's like, what's wrong with him?
I hate this guy.
Yeah, which is crazy to me because my next note is that she was like, I had no idea what kind of magic kept the sheets so perfectly cool and clean, but it didn't take me long to decide that it was tricky and evil. The scent of Fisher never faded from the black silk. And I was like, girlfriend, this sounds like my dream scenario.
Yeah.
You are stuck in his bed. You are not allowed to do anything except for rest.
And go potty.
And the sheets are cool. I thought that's what we were talking about.
The sheets are cool and clean.
Permanently
That too.
cool sheets, yeah.
And they smell like a hot fey male.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Literally what more could you
Carrion
ask
like
for?
came with his muddy boots and it just like disappeared and his snacks and the crumbs just disappeared. I was like,
The
oh
crumbs
my
were
God.
gone?
Yes.
It's amazing. Yeah.
Amazing.
You could eat anything you wanted in that bed, and it wouldn't matter.
Anything.
Anything.
And then she thinks to herself, I wanted to kill him, and I wrote, you spelled kiss wrong. Onyx made quirky noises that sounded like he was laughing whenever I petted him or gave him neck scratches, and I wrote, I love him.
Your voice like slowly morphed through that sentence.
What I do?
Petted him and gave him neck scratches.
Give him neck squidgies. Onyx got him neck squidgies. He's being such a good boy.
You do as you're petting Minnie.
As I'm petting, you want some neck squidgies too. Anyway, my next note is on this same topic where Taylena comes in and would smile at Saris and be like, oh, sorry, like he's not back yet, and then give her a new book to read. And I was like, she gets books too? What am I going to do to get one of these Faye bargain situations? This is my dream. And then finally, Carrion comes in and says that Kingfisher gave him new boots on one condition, that he takes a bath. And I put jellyfish emojis in here because Fisher is jealous.
Yes.
So my note just said jellyfish.
I was really surprised. I was waiting for Kingfisher to make a comment about how Carrion was in his bed. But I guess the bath just
And it's magically clean,
took a
so.
scent away. Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know. But yeah, speaking of Carrion, this is where Sarah says, you've been in Evelia for 5 seconds and you've already had a foursome with a different species of magical creature. And I wrote, this is so on brand. Go off, King. Carrion's an icon. I still love him.
And my next note here is when Saris is at the forge and a quote-unquote figure is heading for her from the garden. It's just Ren, but she says, really, you're going to climb the wall and scare the shit out of me instead of coming in through the door? And he replies, it was quicker that way. And I had to make a note here, like, but how much quicker was it though? Like, I can't imagine it was too much farther, but he was just like, I don't want to walk that way. I'm just going to climb over the wall. And also, how high was the wall? Like, was it an effort or was it just like a 4-foot wall or something? I don't know. I just thought this was really funny. He was just like, I don't want to walk around. I'm just going to climb over the wall.
Hop the wall, no big
straight
deal.
there.
I'm feeling lazy. I'm going to put more effort to climb on this wall.
Exactly.
Oh, it's funny. Well, my next thing is a gif of Cogsworth saying, dinner is served. When Renfist comes up and goes, first I'm charged with the pleasure of letting you know that Fisher's requesting your presence again for dinner. I was like, oh yes, she must go to dinner.
Perfect. Nailed it.
And she sort of volunteers Renfist to come with her, saying she wants to eat with him because you wouldn't want him being Kingfisher to command me to do something I didn't want to do again, because you're a nice Fey warrior, unlike Fisher, who is the devil incarnate. And I said, first of all, valid. Second of all, is there a the devil in your pantheon then? Because like just one for the many gods that went away, I guess, in your realm. I feel like I rarely hear of a the devil in fantasy, but she wouldn't say it if it weren't referencing some sort of religious belief of Zovar and Shirley. Devil Watch, maybe?
Devil watch.
At least here they had like Hell's Teeth or whatever that place
Right.
was. So like there's like hell.
Yeah.
Assuming
Well,
that's
yeah, I
where
have
the
notes
devil
on
lives.
sort of they talk about hell later too, and the devil specifically, but I don't know.
But also part of this conversation, she kind of gets a little information about Nimarel, which is Kingfisher's sword. And Renfis says, all we know is that when the god swords went silent and abandoned, the rest of the Fae who carried them, Nimarel stayed. At a cost. The blade used to shine brilliant silver. As the centuries have passed, it blackened and tarnished, but Nimarel has stayed. The spirit of that sword or the magic inside it, whatever you choose to believe it is, has stayed. No matter what, it's never left him. I would love to know a lot more about that.
Yeah.
That just gives me a lot of questions and zero answers. So, yep, that's all I have because that's all she gives us.
Yep. That's all she wrote
Yep.
in this chapter.
So Saris and Carrion are heading to dinner, and Carrion comments on the dress that she's not wearing and how it would have accentuated certain body parts. And as he like kind of mentions this, they hear a growl from the dining room, and as they head in, Fisher's quote unquote mouth formed a taut line suggesting that he wanted to close his hands around Carrion's throat and snap his neck. And I just wrote interesting reaction here to Carrion's comment about the dress.
Quite interesting. And yet
Just
she's
had
like,
two notes.
he hates me.
Yeah.
Don't talk about my body parts. He hates thinking about them.
I just appreciated that. Like they hear the growl, and then it said Carrion had enough common sense to stop talking. And I was like, oh, good job, Carrion. Way to be observant. Pay attention. I feel like I was expecting Carrion to like put up a little bit more of a fight for Saris, I guess, in some of these moments. But maybe he's afraid of Kingfisher, which is like valid.
Valid. Mm-hmm.
But like, you know, kind of play up that they had slept together or put his arm around her chair, you know, like some sort of something to like kind of taunt Kingfisher, but we haven't seen that. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I feel like given their relationship, I've always got the feeling that her and Carrion got together because of this like go with the flow, I don't care about anything sort of attitude, and then they quickly separated. And that's just the attitude that Carrion's kept. Like, whatever, you know, I'm here if you want me. I've offered sex. So whenever you want it, come get it sort of deal. He's not,
Yeah.
I don't feel like he ever like hit me as one where it's like, oh, I got to fight for it if I'm going to get it. Because he'll just get it somewhere else.
I
Yeah,
guess
he
that's
will.
true. I was just thinking of like the taunting of
Yeah.
Kingfisher, I guess.
Yeah.
And like riling
Yeah.
Kingfisher up type of a thing. But And then I have a lot of thoughts here. Why did everyone freak out when Saris moved her seat to Kingfisher's like right hand, I guess? And I mean, it has to mean something, obviously, because like the first time it happened when it was just the two of them, all of the like fire sprites freaked out. And now Renfis is looking at him like, are you seriously like letting her do this almost kind of a thing? My guess is that it's like the position of like the wife or like, you know, their partner or something like that. And like Kingfisher is allowing it to happen. But even when Carrion tried to like offer to take the seat because everyone was freaking out, Kingfisher was like, try it and die. So like obviously it means something.
I always thought it held some kind of significance, especially when, if you think back to their time in the library, and like Everlane was always pushing on like their, I don't know if it was specifically etiquette, but kind of like just Fae, I don't know if you want to say rules or whatever,
Yeah,
kind of
formalities
etiquette like
and stuff.
stuff. Yeah, formality type stuff. I was like, she probably would have, you know, found out about
Whatever
like,
that means.
like dinner sitting or something, you know, while she was there eventually. But obviously they didn't really have a whole lot of time to go over some of that stuff. So
I just know it means something, and I'm probably going to swoon whenever I figure it out. That's my guess. Oh, he let her sit there the whole time. And then whenever she was like continuing the conversation at dinner, and she's like, I'm getting nowhere with the relics. It's almost as if you don't care if I have to stay here forever. And then Archer lets out a nervous giggle. And I was like, oh, Archer. He knows what's up. He can tell what's going down.
I love him.
I do too.
like a true like butler though, like he already knows probably what's like
100%.
where it's leading to. He's seen this like time and time again with like all the families that he served for or something like that. I don't know.
You could say it's a tale as old as time.
Oh gosh.
Oh
Yes.
my god.
Thank you, Connor.
Oh my god.
But even just how he acts at the very end of this section or whatever,
Yes.
outside the door, like he's literally the best. I freaking love him.
He is the best. I was also cracking up in this scene about Ren and Carrion just trying to mind their own business at this dinner while Sarris and Kingfisher like eye fuck each other the whole time. This was everything to me. I had so many like quote highlights from this. But then the things that Kingfisher was saying in his lowered voice to Sarris in this section. There was one specific paragraph where Kingfisher said, "If I were evil and using your oath for my own purposes, I'd order you onto your knees for me," he said, cutting me off. And I'm going to cut myself off because I would continue the quote. However, my father listens to this podcast, so just know that I'm referencing the entire paragraph here.
Hi, Constad.
Hi, Constad.
Hi, Dad.
Everything's fine right now.
All right, the final note here is when Fisher's like telling her to eat. She's just trying to get her to eat something, and she says, I think this is just in her like own POV. She says, "My anger was eating me, but I raised the fork to my mouth and did it." And I just had to put, someone will be eating, all right.
Got her. All right, chapter 20, Amantrath. My first note here was just that this is where we're introduced to the Omnimaran Mountains, and it just reminded me of Omnomshakrai, which was the name of the dragon earlier, like in the throne room in the Winter Palace. And so that's it. That's really the
last
I forgot
dragon,
about that
is
dragon
what they
already.
said, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because you guys
the
were
last
earlier
dragon.
just said, like, I hope there's dragons. And I was like,
Well,
there's
yeah.
the last one already. So there's a little...
Allegedly.
Yeah, allegedly. I didn't know. I want to make sure you remember it, though. So I'm glad you did remember that they talked about the last quote-unquote dragon.
Yeah.
This is what happens when you read other books. Like, the podcast book is like a consistent little bit every time. And then I'm reading like 50,000 other books on the side with all sorts of random creatures. And I'm like, oh, yeah,
50,000?
this one also has dragons.
You do like a page a day for each book.
Yeah, at one time, 50,000.
This one.
Well, my next note is sort of a little, I don't know, non sequitur as well, but Carrion says, "What in the five hells happened there?" Referring to the mountains. And I say, oh, okay, so 5 hells, but 1 the devil. Seems like a lot to have on their plate, but I guess hell isn't meant to be fun for anyone. But interesting that their, pantheon of hell, 5 hells, 1 the devil. Got it. Following along.
Maybe all the hells are for each realm or whatever.
I don't know. But
The devil is for one of them or something.
But if Carrion's saying it, he's from, Zilvarin, so I would figure that they really only have their, religion or pantheon in mind.
Yeah, but it's already kind of tying into this one.
Unless it's like the devil,
Somehow.
5 lesser devils, 5 hells. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a real pyramid scheme down there.
Yeah, it is. What else would hell be?
Everybody's just like, hey, girl, I haven't talked in a long time.
And if you just get 50 sinners, you're in. Like, that's it. And then you just get them to get their own.
Oh, that's good. We get this really cool description of what the other side of this river looks like. And I just really appreciate Callie's writing in moments. Like, so, like, I feel like I just see all the things. And same with, like, the feeders fight and, like, this moment. It's just, she does such a good job. And so this one says, the land on the other side of the river was blackened, charred wasteland. No snow covered the ground there. Pillars of smoke rose up to meet a grim, foreboding sky clad in a mantle of iron gray clouds. There were no trees, no greenery, only the black dirt and the smoke, and in the distance, the jagged outline of a black and terrible fortress situated on top of a looming hill. That's so intense. Like,
It is intense.
when everything else, like, I'm invested. I'm so entranced in these moments. She does such a good job. And then on a totally different note, this is when Sarris walks in and she sees all of what she sees. And then behind her, Kingfisher emerged from the shadow gate, Bill's reins in his gloved hand. I cannot keep a straight face every time the word Bill shows up in this book.
I have the same reaction.
Such a ridiculous name. I love it so much. Bill the horse. So good.
What a guy. Then Kingfisher is saying about Amantrath, its walls are sheer, made of obsidian, slick as glass, built from the bones of demons. And I wrote, obsidian, Lauren! That's the whole note. There's no real connection yet, but it's obsidian.
I just made a comment here when we meet the tree man, whose name is Holgoth. I just love, he's an earth sprite, but I just love getting, like, seeing all the different, like, really cool creatures and descriptions that Callie writes in. Like, it's so much fun. I hope we get even more of that. I mean, we go through some of them, like, when they're in the tavern, but I want to, like, hear all the cool descriptions. It talked about, like, his, like, bark-like skin and all that kind of stuff. Pretty cool.
Yeah.
I love it.
And I immediately love every single one of them. Any of these
know,
like
'cause
lesser fey creatures, big fan.
Because like they're all sprites, right? At least that's what they call them. But like obviously this dude is looking way different than somebody like Archer, who seems short in stature to me. It's talking about like his cracked skin, almost like it's volcanic, like molten and stuff. It's pretty sweet.
Have you guys seen the Disney movie Elementals?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
To me, that's what Archer is. The little fire people.
Yeah.
And the little short and chubby.
Yeah. I love it.
That's what it's given to me.
Yep.
Anyways, in this section, they are talking about the darn. Every time I see it, I laugh because the very first time in Connor's pronunciation guide that she talked about the darn, Jon, Kyle, and I, all three of us all went at the exact same time. And we were all cracking up the whole time. And it was so great. So go watch that on YouTube if you missed it. And then while they start training with Renfis, and Saris is like looking at Carrion working out and all his muscles and his sweat. And she takes her time describing it. But she says, once my insides would have stumbled over the way I could make out his muscled chest through the damp material. But that was before Fisher. And I was like, you know, that's right, girl. Uh-huh. Just admit it already. My gosh. So then she starts fighting with Ren, and he totally just like knocks her out completely on her back. And it says, Ren grinned broadly. And then in the sexiest Scottish accent you can imagine says, "Atta girl." Freaked out so much. I literally, my note just says, stop, not a good girl with an accent. Put the gif of Nick and Jess from New Girl freaking out when they meet Prince. They just start screaming and freaking out, and Nick like passes out.
Right,
that was me in this moment. And then I tried to tell Kyle about it later, and I literally fell over. I was so excited.
She couldn't even finish the sentence. I don't even know what she was talking about until just now. I got home and she was like trying to talk to me.
and then
She like fell into me, and I like had to hold her. I was like, "What's going on?"
Oh, it's so good. I'm gonna go re-listen to
that
that
so
part
much.
after this episode.
Whenever you're having a bad day.
Yeah, I just need to like make a little voice note.
You want to
on
save
my
that as
phone.
like a text tone or something?
Yes. Oh, so good. I love anytime the words "good girl" is used, like in like romance books and all the things. But whew, with the accent,
Yeah. You should
It's a
play
whole new
Red Dead
level.
Redemption 2. Arthur Morgan
Should.
says it to his horse a lot.
"Atta girl,"
Yeah. He says,
but with a
he goes
Scottish
like,
accent.
No, like with a real rugged cowboy sort of accent. So it's like, easy girl, good girl, that sort of thing.
Calm down.
It was actually, it's kind of funny because it went viral on TikTok for a while for that reason. Other people were like just listening to him talk to his horse, like,
Book talk being feral.
Yeah, because all their gamer husbands are playing that.
Yeah. They pay attention for a second. What'd he say? What'd he say? What'd he say? What are you playing? Well, my next note was just another description of Callie's that sort of caught me off guard when Sarah says she saw the snow pregnant sky. I was just like, wild. Never heard that before. Definitely stealing that description to use on like unsuspecting people in my modern day life next time in the winter, to be like, man, sky looks pretty pregnant out there, right? Probably gonna snow soon. Just have me like, what the hell are you talking about?
I added to this, just adding like, quote, birthing millions of perfect snowflakes. I feel like you
write a
have
book
to have
together.
the birthing. Yeah, we should.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so good. So Saris is still fighting with Renfish. She like gets up again and she's doing the things, and it says, "It was good being able to move again like this, to have proper weapon in my hands. Ever since Heron had bound my hands behind my back and run me through, I'd felt vulnerable, weak, incapable. But now, ... I was myself again. The girl who'd taken down 3 of Madra's guards outside the Mirage. The girl many a Zilvaran thug had underestimated at their own peril. All of the rage and the fear that had been choking me since the Hall of Mirrors welled up inside me and rose up the back of my throat. I flew at Renfish, sword raised, and I screamed." I love
Hell yeah.
this scene for her, and just like, I don't know, just like emotionally being able to like let go of all of that, and it's just so good. I love it so much. I love her too.
She's the best.
And then Kingfisher shows up, of course, and distracts her, and she loses her little fight and stuff. And so then they're kind of having their like back and forth on all the things. And Sarah says, "Let me guess, you've come to show me personally just how useless I am at a sword. Come on then." I held up my hand, gesturing for him to come forward. And she says, "Be my guest." And I just wrote, "Come on, it's giving them to me now." Like, really?
This
So
is
I
pretty
would get-
crazy.
Be our guest.
I'm like,
It's like,
you have me totally on the train now. I'm gonna be looking for Beauty and the Beast references like all over the place in this book. That is crazy.
It just said sword play, not foreplay. My goodness. We're not there yet, Connor. We're got like a chapter left.
Yeah,
This
she's
is
got
all
it on
part
the
of
brain.
it.
Yep. Well, I got one more, John. So and it's like in 2
Wow.
notes from now. So
Perfect.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I got another tattoo note. Bear with me. In Saris's POV looking at Kingfisher, she says, "I could make out the tattoos on the back of his hands now. Both of them were fey runes. The intricate interlocking lines of them shifted and moved across the surface of his skin, the pattern changing and evolving even as I watched." But like, does this... I feel like she's only described this with him specifically. Like, other people might have tattoos, but they don't like move and shift around like this. So is it because of the Quicksilver? Like, this can't be ink, right? Or like, is whatever the tattoos are made of affected by the Quicksilver in his body? Is it just like his shadow magic doing its Maui thing? Like, what is happening?
I thought it was
Yeah.
more shadows, less Quicksilver.
But they are tattoos. That's what I'm confused about. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe it is just his shadows.
Maybe that's part of like where the shadow power like
Comes from.
Yeah.
kind of comes from. Like there's some kind of magic with him getting tattooed or with the runes or something. I don't know.
yeah, maybe.
My question here was how she knows that they're fey runes. Like, has she seen like, are these in Zilvaran, or did she learn these quick in her time at the library? Because she seems to know what these fey runes are, and I can't imagine. I don't know, with like Madra as the queen, I don't know if she would have had a bunch of just random like statues or decorations or like paintings or something of a bunch of fey rooms around the city. So I was kind of confused as to how she knew that these were fey runes.
Maybe she knows that. Like, maybe she just knows, like you said, from seeing other fey runes where she is now, but doesn't necessarily know what they mean. Like, she's like,
Yeah.
oh, I know that's a rune from here, but...
I mean, she's been studying those books, trying to learn about the Quicksilver, and she can't read any
Maybe
of
that's
it. So
maybe that's
could
what it
be
is.
some
I mean,
of
she
that.
might
Have
have,
runes? Do they have runes in Zilvaran?
Well, because
That was part of my question too.
they said, like, the language that she speaks was, like, passed down from the Fae, so maybe there
Right.
is some similarities in their writing and the
yeah.
runes, but obviously maybe not enough for her to, like, read it, or maybe it's just, you know, maybe runes are just patterns in this world, not necessarily a language.
Yeah.
But it is interesting if she does recognize those as fey runes, but not the one on the back of his neck. That's what I'm hung up on.
Good point.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know, but they're cool and sexy and how they move around and stuff. I'm here for it.
Still hot, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just like Maui.
No. Different. Okay, this is my last Beauty and the Beast reference, and I think it was just because Beauty and the Beast was in my head at this point for how far I've read into it. But they go back to his tent and they eat soup together. Says when I was
Yeah, they do.
more than halfway through the soup, he picked up his own spoon and began to eat too. And so I put the nice gif in here where Belle and the Beast are eating soup together in the winter special episode, in case you've ever seen that movie. But in the real one, he, like, you know, eats the porridge or whatever and gets his face all dirty and stuff. But
Oh yeah.
anyways.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah, he does. He sticks his face in there. Just kidding. I'm done.
Wow.
You bailed
Go
out of that
on.
one pretty
And
quick.
he eats the porridge. Go
That's
watch
what
the
they're calling
movie.
it these days.
And his jaw took on a hard set. Cheers. How did you all
Wow.
miss this?
John, I'm so proud of
Can't
you.
believe it.
Wow.
Good job, John.
He was sitting
Okay.
next to me when he found that one, and he was like, "Have you not been taking notes?" I was like, "What do you mean?" He goes, "You missed a jaw clench."
Anyone
Call her
that you
out
miss,
on it.
usually I catch. So this is
I
like
know,
filtered
that's-
through
yeah.
twice. Good job,
Wow.
John. So proud of
Good
you. The self high five. That was lovely. Okay, so this is Saris's POV while they're at this dinner having this like back and forth bantery conversation. And Sarah says there was something else there too. Something that made my body come alive. His scent, the way I knew that he'd entered a room before I saw him, and the melancholy tug at the root of my soul whenever he wasn't in the room. And then they get interrupted, but I just put in all capitals, mates. They are mates. That is how
Hated
that's
mates.
described. There's no other answer here. And if it's anything else,
Yes.
I'm going to be so mad because it is very clearly saying
Mates.
mates, mates, mates.
I laughed at a different part of this exchange where Cersei is getting frustrated with Kingfisher, and she just goes, "You're incorrigible." And Kingfisher says, "I don't know what that means." She just says, "Yes, you do." And he says, "All right, I do. What's your point?" I was like,
So random.
it's such a funny interaction, though, because, like, A, she has no reason to call him out on if he knows it or not. But the fact that he's like, "Yeah, you're right, I do." Like, it was such a pointless lie. He gave into it immediately. Like, "Yeah, I do. Okay, go on."
I loved it.
And then Kingfisher uses his little shadows and he like lifts her up and then he like, oh, then they start kissing and then it's just like, oh, it's just that. Oof. Yes, all of that.
Yes.
Yes, I'm just, yeah.
Wow.
That's
10 out of
So-
10.
so good. So good. Thank you, John. And then right at the end of them having their little makeout session, it's like he stopped abruptly and says he didn't say a word. He held my gaze, unblinking, and for once, the quicksilver that marked his eye was still. And then he says, "I can't trust anything." And then he just leaves. So my theory, I guess, here is the Quicksilver. Is that what's attracting him to Saris as much as I want it to be Kingfisher himself? But like any other time we've heard the Quicksilver talk, they're like begging Saris to like find them and awake them and like all the things. And it's like, "I'm over here, come over here," and like trying to get to her. And so is this like the Quicksilver that Kingfisher's always hearing and is like messing him up and stuff? Is that what's like attracting him to Saris? And that's why he says he can't trust anything, because he can't trust his own mind, or he can't trust whatever he's... You see what I'm saying with this? Like, is this making sense?
Yeah.
So I just felt it was interesting that like in this moment, the Quicksilver was like completely still and it wasn't swirling around for once. Like, did he get a clear mind all of a sudden because it stopped talking to him? And then that's why he was like, "I can't trust anything," and stopped and then walked away. I want it to be that he loves her forever and that they're mates and all the things that I'm fangirling about. But I'm going to hold on to the theory that maybe it's
You'll
the
just get
Quicksilver.
a why choose with her, the Quicksilver, and Kingfisher. Because the
like
Quicksilver is
two
apparently
different-
down
different
bad
versions.
for Saris.
It vibrates
meant-
for her, so.
I just meant that like all the Quicksilver is trying to get to her just because she can waken it, you know, and it just happens to be in Kingfisher. And so like it's messing with his actual thoughts or whatever. And that's why he can't trust anything. Or I
So
don't know
maybe
why
that's-
else he would say that.
Yeah.
Like,
Maybe that's part of the tension. Maybe they are mates and he is deeply attracted to her, but he's constantly hearing the Quicksilver in his head trying to get to Saris. And so he's trying to convince himself that it's the Quicksilver and not him, but it is him too.
Yeah.
I like that.
Or
I'm
they
good
just
with that.
ate and he had like a little bit of gas, but he couldn't trust it. So he's like, "I can't trust anything." And just ran off to the back.
Oh no. Gross. He does come back like he just took a shower, so maybe he had an accident.
Yeah. He comes back saying, "Do not go in there for a while."
Ew. I don't like that version.
Oh my gosh.
All right. I just had to point out how much I love the whole carrion eating quiche thing. And he
Yes.
just wants to like spread the love because he thinks it's so good. This is great. This made me very happy.
Yep.
That was great. We just talked about it, but after the kiss at the tent, Fisher shows up to the war room and he's sopping wet, including his clothes. And I was like, did he just take a cold shower after their hot kiss moment?
I thought maybe he like jumped in the frozen lake, like somehow broke through and I don't know. But I assume it's because he was trying to cover his scent since Renfis could pick up Saris's scent and told her to like go sit by the fire or whatever. So maybe he tried to like de-scent himself before the meeting. That's my guess.
Good call.
Nice. I like it.
And then, once, again, calling out Carrion here, once things start, like, getting a little heated, as, like, Danya starts to kind of interrogate Fisher a little bit, he's, like, still eating his quiche, and he, like, tries to pass some to Saris. She, like, takes a little bite of it. But I think it's funny because it's, like, his popcorn equivalent right here as he's, like, watching all the drama unfold. I love it.
Well, I just imagine him, like, taking the bite and, like, just blindly handing the quiche.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
He's so invested in what's happening.
Still
That's
just
kind of
staring
like-
down at the drama.
What I was saying earlier with him just giving off the unbothered king vibes.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
take it or leave it, man. He's just there for it.
He's just there. And then you guys, OMG, you guys, everybody calm down. Shh, it's fine. Carrion has to say, why is your neck bleeding? I'm so excited.
One more time, we didn't catch that.
He said, oh, I'm just saying. I think Kingfisher tried to bite her neck. And I have thoughts and theories and feelings and more notes.
Lots of feelings. And now Lauren's going to take a cold shower. We'll be right back.
Okay. I'm just like dripping. Whenever we come back, my hair is like, okay.
John, please put an ad break there.
Just a little bossa nova for you, a little elevator music
Thank
while
you.
we wait.
Wow.
She's back.
I'm back. It didn't help. I'm still excited.
Well, maybe this will help because the muscles in Kingfisher's jaw were working here. So cheers.
Cheers.
Okay, at this point in my reading, I had stopped, I think, in the middle of the chapter right after this one. And John was trying to, again, ask me about what I was reading. He's like, who have you met? And I was like, Darcy and the Lorax.
For shame. For shame.
I get the Lorax. I'm lost on Darcy.
I get Darcy. That's the Danby person, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The
And then
Lorax.
Now.
his
Danby.
name is Lorith.
Danby.
Danby.
Okay, I didn't
Danya.
have the Lorax.
I kept saying Danby too. I could not remember her
Danby.
name.
I thought you were talking about the Earth sprite. When you were talking about the Lorax, I did not have that at all.
Okay.
No, his name is Lorith, and I kept thinking Lorax.
Loris.
And then, what is it? I keep wanting to say Danby.
Danby.
Danya.
Anya.
Danya?
Danby. Freaking
Who's Danby?
I
And
don't
I
know.
just started with a D, and there was a Y at the end, and I was like, I don't know, Darcy.
There's, in fact, not a Y at the end. It's in there in the middle.
Oh, yeah, right, not Danby.
It is. If it's
Did
Danby,
you read the book?
Oh my
the
goodness.
Lorax is really funny.
Maybe he speaks for the Earth sprites. I don't know.
Yeah. It's just got his big fat mustache in there.
Oh, let me wipe these tears out of my eyes. I'm going to have to say it correctly in this next quote because my next note was me freaking out over this part. I'm just going to read the little quote here in Saris's POV. My hand raised of its own accord. The shout of panic tore out of my mouth without any doing on my part. Stop. Danya's body rocked sideways. She slammed into the table, her hip colliding with the wood. But that wasn't what drew 20 pairs of stunned eyes toward me. It was her sword, splintering into 1,000 shards, the quivering steel needles shooting through the air and hitting the wall above Ren's head so hard they drove an inch into the pitted stonework. And my note just says, what? With a
Freaking
bunch of
sweet.
exclamation points. This was crazy.
Yep.
I don't know what else to say about that. It was just crazy.
She's so jealous. She's so
is
scared.
jealous, first
She's
of all.
gonna like keep her man safe.
Yes. But I just want to know what else she could do with her power if this was just like one short little outburst of a moment.
That's what I was saying earlier. Like we've only seen like these emotional reactions to things or like a panicky moment. And it's been big epic stuff. So I was excited that she's like slowly actually trying to understand it. And then she'll know hopefully what she'll be able to do. Because she can do really cool things. I just don't think she even knows what she can do. So,
She has no idea. I have no idea.
nope.
I'm excited to find out.
I have an idea.
Okay. Shut it. Then Daniel says, we have an effing alchemist. And Fisher goes, she's mine in italics. And I was like, yeah, she is.
Yeah, she
Fisher,
is.
you tell him about it.
My note here literally said, yeah, she is. My next note, I literally wrote, like, as I was reading this sentence, because something crazy started going on outside, and they were like, what's happening? And in quotes, it says, icebreakers, icebreakers, icebreakers. The cry came from outside. What's happening? I whispered. All hell broke loose. And I wrote, I hate icebreakers too, man. They're always so awkward.
I was so glad you wrote that because my note here was, classic company retreat activity.
Class.
If I'm at a bar and I hear that chant start, I'm like, we gotta get out of here right now.
Icebreakers. Two truths and a lie. They all get out
This
there.
is where my Two Truths and a Lay chapter name came from.
Nice.
So good. Excellent. 10 out of 10.
Well, on to chapter 21 called Icebreaker. I don't know if you guys wanted to say your little jokey jokes that you had there.
No, that was just
Hey,
a
I've read that
condom.
book.
Got any chalk chip?
I love this chalk chip. Nope,
Got
just
any
bloobs.
bloobs?
Carrion again sort of goes into a little bit of a recap mode and says, oh, it turns out my ex can make shrapnel out of swords, so I reckon we're going to be just fine. And Sarah says, I'm not your ex. And I just wrote, so still together, because it's kind of like one or the other. You got to make up your mind on which
they were
one
just
it is.
together one night. It was never
They
official.
weren't dating.
Yeah, all right. If you say so. I see where our standards are.
From the two married couples reading this book.
Yeah, for real. But okay.
The next one I had was the people across the river heaving giant sledgehammers over their heads and brought them down with terrifying force onto the thick ice. Boom, boom, boom. And I just wrote, we give the ice 3 big booms. Boom, boom, boom. With the Costco guys.
Yep.
I was picturing the opening song from Frozen here, where they were like,
Oh.
Yeah.
born a
Born
cold
a
and
cold
winter air. Yeah,
I'm combining.
Good job, Kyle.
amazing.
I love it. And then they officially say the word.
Say it.
I know what you are.
My note here was all caps with a lot of exclamation marks and question marks. Did they just say vampires? I'm so excited. You guys have no idea. And you guys that
Pretty good
first
idea.
episode, and you were like, so what would you like to see the most? Vampires, werewolves? It's like,
It was so
Jerks.
just like
For you.
you knew the
it was
whole time.
organic. It was organic. You were talking about, I forget what else you were talking about, but I was like, oh,
Yeah.
would you like that?
Would you?
Maybe.
Yeah, that was fun.
What I was excited about here was just to find out that Malcolm was a person, because this was in the pronunciation guide a week or two ago, that they just said fought Malcolm on the banks of the Darn, and I did not know, there was no context for that. So I was like, oh, it is Malcolm. It is a person. And then we see him, which was crazy. And my next note was just where Malcolm calls, fine, have it your way, darling. And I was like, darling? I am so confused by this dynamic. I am intrigued by Malcolm.
Same. But according to our daughter, Emma, she says that you always know someone is a bad guy because they use the word darling.
Oh.
So
I forgot about that.
It comes from Captain Hook specifically.
Wendy,
But-
darling. Yeah.
Yes.
Which, you know.
But when we play bad guy, like when we're whatever, and I always use the word darling. She's like, what do you need, darling? She's like, because I'm the bad guy. So Malcolm must be the bad guy. That's what I'm getting at
Must
here.
be.
Or
is he?
Kingfisher's ex.
I mean,
Just because he's the bad guy doesn't mean he is bad guy. Have you not seen Rick and Ralph?
Oh, Ralph, what a reference.
He goes to Bad Guy Anonymous with the devil.
They gave me 5 hells. What am I supposed to do?
or he's saying that because he's actually Kingfisher's mate.
Oh boy.
Yikes.
It was 2 weeks ago.
Calm down. All right. This takes us to our final chapter for the evening, chapter 22, The Itch. And I was just loving this dialogue at the beginning of the chapter where Kingfisher's like, have you got the annoying one? And Ren says, I have. And Carrion goes, I hope you're not talking about me. And Fisher just doesn't respond. Their whole dynamic is the best.
I love it. I just wish Everlane was there. It would like complete the whole little group.
That's in my
So
notes later.
I love her. I think it's funny that Kingfisher won't let them share food or doesn't want them to share food. He was jealous of that whole back and forth with the Kish. Hilarious. And then while she's having this conversation with Kingfisher, she says, something inside me was slipping away. I felt it happening in stages, and it was frightening. The wall between us, the barrier that existed to keep me safe, was lowering, coming apart a brick at a time. I could halt the wall's deconstruction, bring it back up again if I wanted, but I'm like, yeah, but you don't want it to, girl. We know. We know what you want. The chapter's called The Itch. Okay. Like, we know what's about to happen.
Did you read the title?
And then I just have some other random notes before it gets to the good part, I guess. That they have a conversation about who Malcolm is, and we learned that he is a high fae vampire. I just am super intrigued and interested by this whole use of the word vampire and how it's different from other things that I have read, since I've read so many vampire books and watched 100,000 vampire shows and stuff, with them like having two different tiers, like the ones that are high fae changed by Malcolm, who can be themselves, which would be like the vampire I feel like I'm used to seeing, or the ones that are turned by, I guess, still high fae vampire, but they call them their princes, and that they're the like zombie kind, where they're like more like the horde of vampires. We also learned that Malcolm is the first vampire. So does that mean that he turned every other fae that was still alive at the time until they were able to find a cure somehow way back in history? Or how was he the first, but everyone else also got inflicted by this curse or something? So there's a lot there that I would like to know. But yeah, we just kind of learned that he is the king of them and they all follow him. I'm very intrigued by Malcolm and just the whole, obviously vampires because I'm a big fan, but also just like how it works for the sake of this book.
Yes.
There's that. And then Saris kind of discovers that that's where Kingfisher was, like all this time. And everybody's trying to figure out where the heck Kingfisher has been for like the last century. And she says, you were with him, weren't you, for all those years when you were missing? And it says like a tightness formed on Kingfisher's face. And he says, I can't tell you that. And then Saris kind of like realizes, because of her own feelings, whenever the bond is like controlling her, that she figures out that Kingfisher is bound. And like he literally can't tell her whatever the heck is going on. So there's a lot there to unpack and to hopefully find out. Assumedly that bond is with Malcolm, which adds a whole nother layer to that relationship and dynamic, and or potentially whatever's going on there.
Yeah.
So I'm excited about that. I really hope that he's a vampire.
Kingfisher?
Yep. I have feelings on it later.
I do
but
too. Yeah.
Just a lot of info in the middle of this like cute back and forth. Like we kind of know where this is leading to because they're in his room, blah, blah, blah. And then it's also like important info dump. It's almost like she's trying to hide this important information by distracting us in the very end of this chapter kind of a thing. So I just felt like it was important to add, make sure it was discussed.
I appreciate that. Yes. On another note, the first time that Fisher put his hand around Saris's throat in this chapter, I texted John. I had to pause here because I was picking up my children from daycare. But I texted John in all caps and I said, are we getting a spicy scene in this chapter section, with a bunch of the hot, sweaty face emojis, followed by the gif of the guy that's like really excitedly bouncing up and down, like eating popcorn.
Yes. That's an appropriate
And he just
reaction.
laughed at that. He didn't respond. But I didn't know for sure if it was actually going to happen in this chapter section or not, because, you know, you get that like back and forth for a while. And usually the spice doesn't start until around 60%. But I was like, we're almost there, but not quite, you know.
We're at like 50%.
It's 57 now, I think.
Oh, that's like 60%. There we go.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the general formula.
Man.
Why are you laughing at that?
No, it's fine.
This is built on
No, I
years
get it.
of
I get
research, Kyle.
Well, and sometimes like we'll text each other and be like, the spice happened at 40%. We'll be like, ooh, okay.
Yeah,
Like,
that's
you know,
an
like,
extra
it means
spicy book.
something.
Yeah, it does. Most of the time it's 60 or 70%, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Continue.
Yeah. I think my only note, no, I have two notes. My first note for this chapter is Kingfisher saying, I can want to F you and still hate you, little Osha. And I just wrote, the denial trope in all romantasy where they're like, no, I definitely hate you, but we are going to bang. So
Oh, yeah.
I hate you. So, big quote.
I hate you, but just in case, let's have sex.
And then he says like all these things about how much he does not hate her.
Yeah.
It's fine. Okay, it says his lips parted and the sight of his sharp canines sent a rush of warmth directly between my legs. And I wrote, same girl. And then it said, you want to bite me, I whispered. You nearly did back in your tent. You scratched me with your teeth. You drew effing blood. And everybody just calm down, okay? Because he's going to bite her. Ooh, they're talking about it. And then she says, when he raised his head a little to speak, his canines weren't just on display. They were longer than I'd ever seen them, sharper. His left canine had punctured his lower lip and had drawn blood. Everybody, guys, calm down. Everybody, not freaking out. It's okay. We're going to make it through together.
Everybody take deep
It's
breaths.
fine. My hands are sweaty.
Hey,
I'm
go
so
hit
excited.
go hit the showers again.
Be right back. This just like helps confirm that I feel like he's a vampire of some sort.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
while like, yes, she looks at his mouth probably more than others' mouths. She doesn't describe their long fangs or any sort of thing like that. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Just,
I'm with you.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I agree. I had a lot of highlights from this section that I will not be reading aloud, but hot damn, he be climbing those book boyfriend rankings real quick. And the one quote I did put in at this point was when he said, "Oh no, little Osha, you're going to be looking right at me for this. Look." And then he waited until she made eye contact with him again and moved his hand back up to her jaw. I just can't. I can't. There was too many highlights. I feel like if I read all of my highlights aloud, this book would just be outing all of my kinks. So I'm just not going to do that.
Connor, you just did by saying that.
Anyway, my next note, what is up with the tattoos though? Because this is the part where she like has her hands on his chest and then the ink starts flowing from his skin to her skin, like like up her arms from the backs of her hands, like up to her forearm. And it says a delicate little bird took shape on the inside of my right forearm. It stretched its wings and took flight, its tiny body flitting over my stomach as its wings beat 1,000 times a minute. So I'm also just pointing out here that a bird was the only other creature mentioned on Fisher's bedposts along with the wolves and dragons. I would have thought that her tattoo would be like a butterfly or something because he calls her Osha and not a bird. So I just thought that was interesting. And then because I said that it was from his bedpost, I put the gif of Patrick Stump singing, "I'm just a notch in your bedpost, but you're just a line in a song."
Nice. Well, and I thought it was interesting that she tried to take her hand away because it like she noticed the tattoos and then he like grabbed her hand and put it back on his chest or whatever. Like whatever that means.
Yep.
I mean, obviously to touch him or whatever, but like in the moment too, like with the tattoos, like he wanted that to happen or was okay with whatever was happening or was controlling them maybe. I don't know. I need to know more. I also think it's funny that you're like so intense about the tattoos because you're about to get your own tattoo. So I feel like tattoos on your brain.
Yeah. Mine don't do that.
Not yet. Get the right kind.
My last note for the chapter section was just where she said 2 sentences in a row. She just says, "I just had sex. I just had sex with Fisher." And I just put the gif of the Lonely Island song like, "I just had sex. And it felt so good."
Classic. Oh my gosh. This is the last note of this section when Saris comes out of the room just to see if she can get out, like from the oath. And Archer's standing there asking her what's wrong. And I just loved her whole like this is also just like a shout out to Stella Bloom because the way she narrated this little paragraph was just so funny. But she was like, no, I'm fine. Honestly, I'm fine. We were just moving some furniture around, that's all. But then Fisher decided he preferred it the way it was, so we moved it all back again.
And Archer's just like, sure.
Right, yeah.
Better replenish your energy levels then.
Moving furniture is hard work.
And he's just out there petting Onyx. They're just
Yes.
the best. Archer.
It's so good.
Yeah, and that's finished up this chapter section. So, ladies, what are our current character thoughts?
You
Let's
already
hear it.
know what I'm going to say.
I do.
I love them.
Oh,
I love them. I love them. I am so much more obsessed with Onyx. The fire sprites are so dramatic, and I love it so much. Carrion is still 100% that bitch. I am loving the dynamic between, that's all I have to say about that. I am really loving the dynamic between Ren and Carrion, although I do miss Everlane. We talked about that a little bit. Yeah. I don't really care about Darcy and the Lorax right now, but because they have names, I'm sure they're important, and I'm sure I'll care about them at some point. But Saris is still one of my favorite FMCs right now. And Kingfisher is really leaping up the book boyfriend rankings in that last chapter. So I am ready for more of that. Lauren?
Great. Lauren?
I wrote, gosh, I love them all. I just love everybody. Saris is amazing. And I just love everything that she does. I feel like there's a lot of times you're reading a book and you're like, oh, I really love this character, except, or, you know, whatever. But like, I don't have that for her. She's just great. Mm-hmm. She's just wonderful. Kingfisher is hot as heck. And if he's a vampire, I will actually explode. Actually. Oh, does that mean it's going to happen, Kyle?
I'm just worried about it. You're going to explode?
I love Renfis and Carrion and all the lesser fey creatures. And of course, I love Onyx. I am so intrigued by Malcolm. I don't know what I was like expecting for an antagonist, I guess, or what the like issues they would have outside of Madra, I guess. So I'm really interested to see more of that. It wasn't a vampire anything. So super excited about it and super intrigued. And then I've talked about it a couple times. I just really love seeing Saris's little development of her power and hopeful growth from that. And then obviously her relationship with Kingfisher and how that's going to progress. I'm loving this book and don't want to stop and cannot wait to see what happens.
It's so good.
So good.
Well, speaking about what happens, do you have any thoughts and theories about what might happen?
Boy, do I. First of all, because Lauren just mentioned an antagonist, I'm just thinking that I think Malcolm was introduced. I think he was supposed to be introduced as the antagonist, but I keep having this feeling that he's not actually the antagonist, and I feel like it's maybe like Belicon or somebody. Just because of our first impression of him for some reason, and like Kingfisher's been with him for like 110 years or however long it's been. And yeah, I don't know, I'm really intrigued by that, and I am excited to learn more about him. I feel like Saris will become like Fae or immortal at some point if she isn't like halfway there already. I don't know if being an alchemist changes her lifespan at all, or maybe Kingfisher is a vampire and then that's how she also becomes immortal. I was very excited about that.
Too bad.
Oh no. And the feeders
terrible.
have to no, I'm bummed. The feeders have to make it across the ice eventually, right? I feel like that's going to happen. I am expecting some kind of spooky like face-to-face confrontation with Malcolm soon. Like I just feel like we'll get some kind of, you know, actually close quarter sort of interaction with him soon. So I'm very curious about like him and just what Kingfisher's time with him was like. And if maybe they're like related somehow. I don't know how that would work, but I also still want to know what Kingfisher's real name is because it cannot possibly be Kingfisher. I reject that reality. But maybe it's one of those Fae tropes where like his name was taken from him or he's trying to conceal his true identity for some reason. I also still think that he can read minds though. And then I would love to know why Belicon has this monopoly on all the silver in his realm. Is he intentionally trying to prevent his kingdom from learning some sketchy truth about some dark and dirty thing he did that they would inevitably learn if the Quicksilver were activated and people were allowed to come back? Does he have something to do with Madra being an evil bee? Is he scared of her? I feel like she would be scared of him, but there's also got to be some reason he doesn't want anybody traveling between realms. So maybe Belicon is just like a bunch of sprites in a trench coat and they don't want the real Belicon coming back. And maybe Madra is actually just the real Belicon in a trench coat. That's where I landed on my
Classic double trench coat trope.
Classic trope.
Wow, you went really deep in those theories, Con.
And there we are. You're welcome.
Lauren, what about you?
Oh my gosh. Okay, I just know something is up with Kingfisher, like that he isn't just Fae or something. At first, I thought it was the whole werewolf thing because it was some of like that wolf-like behavior we had talked about in the other episodes. Plus, we learned in this one, we didn't talk about it, but we learned that his relic, it was his mom's. And so maybe the like wolf thing is hereditary or something like that. But now that we've met Malcolm, kind of, and they talked a couple weeks ago and he was with him for the last century or whatever, and Kingfisher is bound to his secrets and that he wanted to bite her and drew some blood and stuff with his sexy fangs makes me think that maybe he's a vampire. So I'm here for both of those things. I'm leaning obviously way towards vampires, but that's okay. And then I said this like literal seconds ago. Like I know Saris isn't focused on other mouths, but I just feel like they're not described the same way. I don't know. So maybe his fangs It's because he's a vampire. I'm just sticking with it. So if that's the case and Kingfisher is able to be a vampire just walking around the camp though, and like no one else notices that he's a vampire this whole entire time, that does slightly worry me that there could be other people doing that. Like worries that the other vampires would be bad. Not worried because they're hot. Just putting that out there.
Definitely not worried about that.
If there's hot vampires. Just not the bad ones, I guess. But like if they're like hiding in plain sight or something, because that could be something. Also, when they went into his giant Harry Potter tent that was like way bigger on the inside, you know what I'm talking about? They described like all these books that were out and like strewn all over the place and open and stuff. So my theory is that he is helping her study this whole alchemist stuff. He just hasn't said anything about it, and he's reading all these fae books that she can't read and understand, and he's actually like being helpful. That's my guess
nice
with
of him.
that. I know. He's so great. I also want Everlane to come back into the story. Saris just really needs a gal pal. And then I want to know what is up with the right side of the table and what's going on with that seat. And I would also like Kingfisher to snuggle and not leave right after.
So this is thoughts, theories, and requests.
Yes.
Comments and concerns.
Comments, concerns,
Your
thoughts, prayers,
aftercare
emotional
game could use a little
disturbances.
work, Kingfisher.
Okay, the cry counter. Nobody has cried while reading. I think we all, maybe not Kyle, but the rest of us cried with laughter in this episode. But one day maybe we'll cry.
Maybe.
Well, guess that's it then, huh? So you should be our friend. That's all for this week. Next week we're discussing chapters 23 to 30. So please do read along with us to be part of the journey. Before you go, please take a moment to rate the episode and leave a nice little review for us. We would really appreciate it. You can follow us on Instagram and TikTok as well for more fun and exciting book content, updated podcast schedules, merch drops, lots more. If you'd like to chat about this episode with us, check out the dedicated podcast episode channels in our Discord through Patreon. See you there.
Well, slap some butter on me, call me a biscuit. If you're hungry for more, visit betweenpagesandfriends.com to peruse and join our Patreon. Dive into our Discord, chat about our weekly episodes, bring your bestie for book club, meet the merch, and follow your 4 favorite friends, that's us, and what we got our eyeballs into on Goodreads and Storygraph. Until then, choke me and check my temperature. Nice. Ruin me, and then ask if I'm okay.
Hello.
No? Didn't like that?
What is happening now?
Until then, kiss me like you're trying to erase my memories. Until then, bite me like you mean it.
What
There
in
it
the
is.
chat GPT is going
I
on?
know, right? Until then, break my trust in my bed frame. But also, stay wordy, stay nerdy, don't stress, and stay blessed.
I want all of you to take that audio out of context as much as possible.
I want everyone to come up with their own and leave it in the comments.
Oh, yes, please do.
Oh, man. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
For real.
Bye.